Welcome to More Than Renovating, a renovate and real estate podcast. Our founder, Belinda Smith, talks to industry experts to provide you with the knowledge and information you need to make renovating for love and profit your reality. Belinda will also chat to some of her Renovation Mastery members, who are just everyday people doing extraordinary things, following their passions in the renovation and property space. So, let's jump straight into the episode. Enjoy.
And real estate. And in today's podcast episode, I have my special guest, Tracy Feild. This is our More Than Renovating podcast. And the reason why I call it More Than Renovating is there's so much more to the human story about renovating, about property investing, about getting started, about all of our hopes and our dreams. And so I'm really pleased to have Tracy with me, because Tracy and I, we just had to remind ourselves to press record. We were having a great big chat before the start. So I know that Tracy's really open to sharing her journey with you. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Belinda. I'm excited to be here. It's good.
So why renovating for you?
So renovating for me, I think I've grown up, my father was a builder, and he was actually one of the first people to do steel frame technology with building homes way back when. And I can remember, being 13, 14, and he bought an architect's board and sort of set me up. We had a room out the back, and I used to love drawing house plans, and I used to take that in and say, would this work, and all that sort of thing. So I've always sort of, I guess, had building and houses and a love of that in the background. And the other thing that I've always, as I've grown up as well, I always noticed I was very drawn to architecture and older architecture, and thinking about, how fabulous it would be to take that and turn it into something else. And I think the thing for me about renovating is that new life, being able to take something that's lackluster, that's, lacking love, and to be able to put your skills and your energy into that and produce something that then creates a home for somebody else. And knowing, that's where the satisfaction comes from as well, too, that you've created something special that somebody can come into and they can start their life, or they can start their next journey.
Yeah, so it's not all about the profit for you. It is about that handing on a beautiful product to the next family and seeing their enjoyment.
Yeah, it is.
Or both.
It's actually both. So for me, the other thing about, why I'm here where I am at the moment, and I've done a few different projects sort of along the way, but why I'm specifically here at the moment is the big why for me is that the renovating, and in particular in the early stages right now, is flipping. And my goal at the moment, I'm 57, and my goal at the moment is I want to be out of corporate by 60, if not earlier. The sooner I can get out of corporate and pursue the passions that I have, the better for me. Yep. I see renovating giving me the opportunity to do that. And I've got a plan, I've got a plan that I want to be able to fulfill. So when I say I retire at 60, it's retiring from corporate and finally being able to spend time doing the things that I want to do in my life. Because, the yardstick's only so long, and, we spend so much of our life actually doing things for everybody else. I've got family, kids, all that sort of stuff. And then you get to this point and you go, it's about time, it's time for me, and doing what I want to pursue. And sometimes fear of things holds us back from doing things sooner. So that's my why. My big why, and the driver that I have to keep coming back to, is it's a 3-year plan. So
tell me a little bit about your background, because just for everybody listening, I had a phone call with Tracy, and I hung up the phone afterwards, and I thought, I wish every person who called me was just like that lady, because you said so articulately, this is where I'm at, this is what I've done so far, I value education because you've got what I need, this is where I'd like to be, I'd like to work, at a higher level in the renovation space, and I know you can provide that. How can I start? When can I start? And I just thought, all right, so this is a lady who is capable, articulate, who's made up her mind. So tell me about your background and, what's got you to this point.
Yeah, sure. So I guess for me, I was fortunate enough I bought my first place at 23, and that was an old Queenslander in Camp Hill. And so when I bought that, my son was about 3. And actually bought it for the jacaranda tree in the backyard. So it was huge. And I remember going in there. I mean, I loved the house and I could see the potential of it, but I looked at this tree and I thought, how great would that be, for Trent to grow up and have a really nice tree house in that tree and a yard to play in. And the other thing that was really good about it as well too was the fact that it was a 40 perch block and it couldn't be built in. So there was a lot of that happening in Camp Hill, and you see it today where they've taken away old Queenslanders and they've built townhouses and everything on those sites. But this particular block was a corner block, couldn't be built in because it had a jump box in the back. So it had a council easement, which was great.
Yes.
And so I thought, yeah, no, this is good. And so we got into that place. It was a deceased estate. I did a bit of research on it, and the people that were left the property was unencumbered. They lived out in the bush, and it was in those times too where there wasn't really email and everything else like that. So the negotiating went on backwards and forwards for about 6 weeks, all out to the mail service out in the bush somewhere. So, but it was great, and I eventually got it for a good price. And this was in the days too, so I'm going back a while now, but interest rates were quite high as well too. So, that was a bit of a daunting thing going into that. But it had great bones, and it was a great house. And we renovated that. We put a deck out the back, and putting the deck out the back gave us city views at night. We put a veranda on the front. We did a lot of work internally. And it's funny because I look back at those photos now and I think, oh my God, what an 80s color scheme that was. And it's like, I look at it now and I think, oh my God, I would never have done that today. But the thing that I love about it as well too is, it's been on the market a few times since I've owned it, and it's still pretty much in its current state, but the people that have owned it have enhanced it, and they built in the deck and put another room out there, and then they built over the garage and they've expanded it. But the fundamentals are there, which is really satisfying for me to know, hey, they didn't have to change anything, like it's functioned and it's worked. So that was my first one. And so my son, you can imagine, I've got photographs of him. We sort of renovated around living in there. So we renovated room to room. And so we sort of, went around there. And I've got photographs of Trent when he was sort of 3, in the middle of all of that renovating. So we sort of did that. And then we relocated up to my mum and dad's place. So they've got acreage up at Peachester, which is sort of way up the range in the Sunshine Coast hinterland. And we were going to subdivide a block of their land off, and we went through and I did all the pre-work with council, and we built a big, like an American barn kind of thing with a flat up the top, and we were going to live up there and construct on the back and do a build. And at the last minute, when we went for formal approval through council members had changed and they'd become very, very green. So they didn't like the fact that we were actually going to have to cut in a new driveway. We minimised all of the removal of timber and everything because obviously we wanted to be in that bush environment, but it was still too much for them. So they declined that, which sort of set us back. So we had to change tack. So we've had a few startovers. I've had a few startovers, but I was fortunate to find another little old Queenslander in Glasshouse Mountains. I looked into the history, and it had been relocated from Nunda.
Yes.
It was a true Queenslander with the gun barrel hallway. It was in shocking condition. It had been on the market for ages.
Lots of painting to do.
Oh, look, it was everything. It had just been really unloved. And the good thing about it, though, was in town. So it was on a sort of town-sized block, had town water. And I went in, it had been to auction and nobody had bid on it. And it was still sort of sitting on the market. And I saw it and I rang the agent and I said to him, look, is it still available? And he goes, yes, it's still available. Quite excited that somebody might be interested. So I went and had a look at it. And you know how sometimes the universe sort of gives you direction on things and gives you sort of signals, yes, you're on the right path, or yes, it's a good thing to do.
Yes.
We've gone in, and around the door, you've got the big sort of door of the Queenslander. It's a gun barrel hallway. You've got the original ruby glass around the outside, which was just beautiful. I've opened the door and it's had this Axminster carpet running down the hallway. And it's got big crimson roses on it. It was exactly the same carpet that was in my grandmother's bedroom.
You had an immediate emotional.
I had an immediate, okay, I'm meant to do this. So that's what we did. So I bought that property. We did a bit of renovation and everything on that, just slowly. And when we went in there was no kitchen, there was nothing. And I have this fantastic photograph, again, carting Trent around everywhere I go. On the day of settlement, I went and picked up the keys from the agent, went straight in, ripped all the carpet out, did all of, got everything out of there straight away. And I've got this photograph of him, and there's this mountain of newspaper from underneath the the carpet that we pulled up, and it's just so high, and he's standing there in his school uniform, and he's just sort of, showing how high it is. Yeah. But the best thing about that, which blew me away, when we were pulling up the carpet and he was helping me, we were picking up all the newspapers, and here is this newspaper, and it is on the front page. It's when Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon.
Oh, wow.
It was just amazing. And ironically, a friend of mine, her son was doing a project at school about the moon landing and everything. So I actually gave that to her for her son to take to school and say, hey, here's an original newspaper.
The things we find when we peel back the layers.
I know, it's fantastic. So we were in that one for a while, and then, which was great. And then unfortunately things for me happened. And so, I went through separation with my marriage, kept the house, but then I was working in Brisbane. I went back to working full time. I was kind of in a fortunate position where I could do projects that I wanted to do. And I used to run, sounds a bit crazy and very diverse, but I used to run air shows. So there was a big air show in Caboolture that I actually used to.
It's very diverse, but you're an organised woman, so I'm not surprised.
It's very diverse.
Run anything.
That's exactly right. Well, and it was the marketing background, and at the time we actually had hot air balloons, and we were in the tourism industry and all that sort of stuff. So it was sort of a bit of a spin-off from that. So what I found myself in the situation of, I didn't have a big mortgage, but I sort of looked at that and I thought, you know what, I don't just want to sit here and just settle. I want to be able to, achieve more, and I want to be able to, for want of a better word, I want to make sure that Trent has a better life and he has those things and those opportunities that other kids have. So made a decision, okay, I'm going to go back to work. I'd been in banking and finance since I was 17. So I thought, okay, well, go back to what you know. So I thought, all right, I've got to get back into the industry. So I sort of had a look around for what I could do that had flexibility. And crazy as it sounds, I actually went in with Aussie Home Loan as one of their mobile lenders in the days when they didn't have brokers. It was just Aussie Home Loans. It was in the days where John Simon was going to save everybody.
Yeah. He was on every ad.
Oh yeah, it was in those days. But it was great because it gave me a really good foundation. Yes. We had, we sort of had one product to work with, and it was a good product, but it was really getting back into understanding the market and coming back to, the regulation about lending and all of the things that were in place. So that got me back in there. And I was probably back in there for about 12 months. And then I became a branch manager at Suncorp. So then made the decision to move back down to Brisbane.
So has that given you a really good understanding of numbers, of finance, of predicting your financial future, of looking at income, loans, property?
Yeah. The greatest thing that I feel so fortunate and grateful for is that part of my journey, because now, and then having spent such a long time in that space as well. So, since going into that, which would have been in 2000, it's now 2023, and I'm still in that part of the business in terms of lending and finance. And, my role now has me, in a national role where I work with, 4,500 brokers. So, and I'm still intrinsically linked into that property market and all things mortgages, retail residential mortgages. So it does give me that insight. It does make me very fortunate. But the thing, again, with my journey is, through that space of that 23 years, I became a branch manager that was a lender. I became a mobile lender. And so I was in a position where I was working with lots of clients and seeing lots of different financial situations and things that they were doing. And it gave me the ability to help them and to guide them on their journey and to look at the thing for me always is that's important is to look at your financial situation holistically.
Yes.
Think about where you are today, where you want to get to, and the why. We always talk about the why. So what's the objective? And then what are the steps in between that you have to do to get there? And that's been really good for me as well too. And, I've been able to I call it generational lending. So I've been able to work with mum and dad, and then their kids are old enough and they're looking to buy their first home. And that's the scariest thing, for a first home buyer to go in and buy a property. It's bloody scary. And it's worse now than it was when we sort of did it.
Yeah, it's a big leap.
Look, so much has changed, you know, and so they're really looking for people that have got that experience, and even people going and buying their first investment property and what they're doing. And And that's where, as we were talking about before, there's so much value in this group because there's so much collective knowledge. And the thing about this group as well is that they're so open to sharing. And some of the other Facebook groups that you've got, the Mum and Dad Renovators group, and again, I'm in there all the time and I'm watching the commentary. And I just love the fact that people are so generous and so giving in their knowledge. It really aligns to my values as well.
Yeah. I think, you know what I think? I think there's nothing in it for any of us to hold our cards close to our chest. And I think that renovating is an equal opportunity sport. In fact, I think women do remarkably well in this field, and that they have equal, if not better, opportunity of really getting going in the renovation space and replacing their income if that's what they desire. Through renovations, through either flipping and buying holds. And I love buying holds too, you know that. So I agree. I think that just everyday people, not the big egotistical chest pounders, I've got 6 properties, how many have you got? That just makes me squirm. That's meaningless. That honestly, they're just vanity metrics and it's just meaningless. Every time I go on some dude's podcast, oh, Belinda, how many properties have you done? I just throw up in my mouth a little bit. I think, why does it matter? It actually doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
I'm not going to be the poorest person here. I'm not going to be the richest person here. It is irrelevant. We're all on our own journeys. And I love the fact that women just kick butt at renovating.
Oh, look, so do I. And I think, a big part of my journey and my career with, going through my career, there's always been this thing about empowering women. And when I was a lender, I don't know why, and they just seem to be drawn to me. But the 2 areas that my client base was founded on one was first home buyers, which I loved. And the other one, believe it or not, was women that were starting out or starting over. So, having to have that reset, it can be a terrifying experience. And I mean, I can remember, I had one of my clients come in and say to me, they brought money in and they said, look, we just want to put money in the term deposit. And I knew her and I sort of said to her, and it was money that she'd been left from her mum as an inheritance. And she was, a lady that was sort of in her early 40s. She had, a child and that sort of stuff as well. And I said to her, look, if you could do anything in the world with this money, what would you want to do with it? And she said, oh, look, if I could afford to buy a house, that would be ideally what I would love to do. And I said to her, so can I ask you what makes you think you can't have a house? Yeah. And so we had a conversation around that, and she expressed her circumstances and things that had happened in the past with her partner and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so we sort of chatted through that. And I said to her, look, would you mind if I took the time to work this through with you and see whether it is something that's actually possible? And she said, no, not at all. So we did do that. We went through the numbers. We had a look at all of that. And she had her own little business. So she was in beauty therapy and she had a retail store in one of the shopping centres. And as you can imagine, it costs a bomb to actually rent in a retail shopping centre.
Yes.
So we talked about the property and I said to her, so ideally, if you had a situation, because she was working mum, and I said, if you had a situation where you could find a property that allowed you to own that home and set up your business underneath that house or in a part of that house, and then you've got, baby coming home from school and everything, you could combine everything. What would that feel like for you? And she said, that would just be exactly, that would be the dream. So I said to her, okay, let's talk to hubby. Let's put an application in. We'll do it as a pre-approval. Let's see if we can get you approved. And if we can get approved, then let's start looking for the property. And that's exactly what we did. And it's a funny thing because once you start talking about that, and you start thinking about it, you're manifesting it. And, within a week, she found the perfect house. It was a high set. It had the room already underneath, like all the space underneath, done for her to set up separately as a salon. And it was perfect. And so
she's on her way. So
we settled on that and it changed the course of her journey, financially as well.
There are lots of single women in my group. How much of a previous life's journey do we carry with us when we're making our property decisions?
Oh, look, so much of it. And that was even with me, even though I was going through this and doing this, for other people, I've always had this passion about renovating. I mean, I was lucky that I had the journey that I did because I was able to educate my son. And with my son, he bought his first place. He was 19.
Yeah.
It was a flat in Paddington up here in Queensland. So he could walk to work, but it was a bit crappy. And it was an old Queenslander that been broken up into flats. And I said to him, you know, he'd grown up with me renovating, and he couldn't quite kind of get why I did this all the time. I think he thought I was a bit insane because we were sort of living a mess. Anyway, I said to him, I said, look, this is great for the price. You're walking distance. It's Paddington. It's Kennedy Terrace. It's got good future potential growth. So I said to him, here's the deal. If you want to buy this, and it was a 1-bedroom flat, and we sort of talked about the potential of it. I said, if you want to buy this, then I will lend you the money to renovate it.
Yeah.
And I said, and we will uplift this property. And I said, and the deal is I'll lend it to you. You don't have to repay it back. I said, but you're not allowed to sell the property. I said, the only time you're allowed to sell the property is if you're upgrading.
Okay.
So it was really cool. So we did that. And we did that as a project together. And I have to tell you, it was the best mum-son sort of bonding thing. And the great thing about it when we finished, and it was beautiful. When it was finished, it was beautiful. And he said to me, I get it. I finally get it
now. Yeah.
And the great thing about that was, and then he met his partner, who's now his wife, and they were like two little peas in a pod there. But he came to me and he said, Mum, I want to sell the property. And she was great with money as well, and she had good savings, and her mum and dad are in the building industry as well. And he said, I want to sell the flat. And I said, okay, what are you going to do? And he said, well, Sarah and I want to buy this block of land at the Gap, which wasn't too far from me here, and we want to build. And I said, not a problem. So he put that property on the market, and that property, he made such good money out of that property. And then they were able to put their funds together. They built the house. They were in that for a while, and then they've just recently turned it out. And, you know, they've just been solid. So
such a good start.
Look, it sets them up for life. They've bought a property. They've now gone that next step. So the rule always was step in and step up. That's always been my rule with, you know, my conversation with first home buyers.
Yeah.
Into the market. So step into it and then work your way up, whether it be through renovating and improving your equity, paying it down, or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then in relation to that as well, now they're in a situation, they've gone that next step, they've got a little bit more land because they've got a couple of puppies, they've set themselves up for their next 10-year plan, they've bought down Dormo.
Yeah.
You know, they own a property that's worth about 1.2 mil, and they owe, I think, about 200,000 or something on it.
So you've really helped them see the way. You've set the example, and then you've helped them a little bit financially to get a start. And you could probably name 5 of their friends who are sitting around going, I just have to rent because it's too expensive to get a start. But people who aren't prepared, especially some young people, to go without for a little while, to save some money, to get that little jump into their first property and then into their second. So I just think this is really important for us as mums to set that example for our kids, whether we're single or married. We really need to set the way.
Oh, absolutely. And you're quite right. I mean, I can remember sitting around talking to Trent and Sarah, and, you know, we spoke about, you know, how many kids from his grade 12 class own a property and everything.
Yes.
And it's not very many.
It's not very many. Yeah.
And he's 33. Like, he turned 33 this year. And even looking back, he's 33, and the number of kids from that class that own their own properties or that, you know, are in their own homes, it's not very many at all. So, to your point, Belinda, I think as parents, you know, the financial education that we give our kids is super important, but not just that. It's about making sure that they believe that they can achieve these things, and then showing them and giving them some guidance along the way by setting the example. But to your point, I think sometimes as women, we do have self-limiting beliefs, or we have these fears that come out. And I know for me in my situation, and we spoke about this earlier, I've wanted to do this for so long. Like, I've been dabbling around in it. I've wanted to do it for so long. And I always had this fear because I was the only income source that I had. And just through a couple of, you know, different experiences through life, like with some things that happened with my folks. And also the the mantra that our parents gave us. In their day, it was about get your property, get your house, pay it down and just lock in, pay it down, and don't do anything else. And there's always this thing, you've got to have this roof over your head. Yeah. And so it can drive a fear that if that gets compromised or challenged, you know, it's just such a big fear. What happens if I'm, you know, I do this and financially I fail, or it compromises my financial position, then I'm going to go backwards. And you know, as a single person doing this on your own, that can sometimes be the biggest inhibitor to taking that step forward. And it was certainly mine.
Yeah, honestly, it's much easier to stay still and not change anything than to take that leap of faith. So what makes that leap of faith? What de-risks that leap of faith?
You know what? And for me, so to your point, while I was in my holding pattern, paralyzed by fear, what I did do was education. And it's so key. So as you know, I've done a number of different courses from different property groups. And I've taken something from everyone. There's always been nuggets in each one. And, you know, I think that with anything, you take the best of everything and you roll it together and you mold it and it fits you and you've got a lot of guidance there. But the thing that was missing for me was exactly what you said. It was that strategy to de-risk. And I listened to a lot of property podcasts and I listened to a couple of different ones. And then I came across your property podcast. And I remember going back probably 5 or 6 years and it only dawned on me after we'd had our conversation not that long ago that I actually had spoken to you guys before when it was the two Belindas.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was ages ago. And I had a conversation then and I thought I was ready.
Yeah.
But I still had that fear factor there and I hadn't found the solution to de-risk that fear factor and take that away.
Yeah.
And the more I was listening to property podcasts and everything and a couple of the different groups, this thing about JVs came up and then I thought, okay, well, maybe that's the way I could do this with someone else. And then I'm minimizing my risk, because I'm involved with someone else. And the big thing for me was having that backstop, having that reassurance that, okay, I'm on the right track. The figures are right. I'm not crazy. And not only that, but having that checking mechanism, because sometimes you can get a little bit emotionally attached to a property and you think, oh, no, it'll be all right. It'll work out in the end. We'll get the number that we think we need.
Yeah.
You're not really coming back and checking those numbers. So,
or having somebody else look over your shoulder and say, yes,
exactly.
You're on the right track. You haven't missed anything, or no, you haven't allowed enough for a new kitchen, or just having somebody else to run things by.
That's the key. It's just having that backstop, that reassurance and having that. So, I kind of started to figure out what it was that I needed to remove that fear factor. And so part of that was which is what I've educated my son to do. So it was really about practicing what I preach, and that is always have a plan B.
Yeah.
So, that's my mantra. That's been my mantra for him all his life, is take the opportunity, but make sure you've got a plan B in case things don't go right. So it was about having the plan B in place, but it was about finding a way to remove the risk. And I happened to be listening to your podcast, and it was a podcast that you were talking to Kelly.
Yeah.
And I think I'd listened to the one with Lauren as well, Lauren May. And that was kind of the beginning, I think, of the wheels turning and thinking, oh, okay, maybe there's something in this. But it was when I then listened to Kelly's and I just resonated with Kelly's story.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's it. If I can get a reno coach, and I can have that coach and I can work with that coach, then that person is there to check my numbers and make sure that I am that my numbers are right, that I'm not going crazy, that I'm on the right track. Because the one thing that does challenge me, and especially in the different markets that we've been experiencing at the moment,
you
do your FISO, you go in and you do your comparisons.
Yeah.
Kind of like, okay, and you work it all out and say, okay, this is unrenovated, this is renovated, to an okay level, but not for sale. And then you've got the other ones.
Yeah.
And you're looking at this and then you're going out and you're doing your opens and you're talking to the agents and you're looking at it thinking, where are you getting your comparables from that you're actually taking to a vendor to set this price point?
Yes.
I can remember having a conversation with an agent because, I'm scratching my head and I just said to him, look, just so that I can understand, get a bit of guidance and go back and a point of reference, can you give me an idea of some other properties that are comparable to this one? So I've got a bit of a gauge on the price point. And I remember him saying to me, oh, no, we're not working off comparables now. This is what the market's dictating. And I went, okay, but if the market's dictating that, wouldn't it be reflected in the recent sale prices?
Yes.
But it was a hot market. So really what he was saying is we're throwing Well, this is why a lot of what I'm finding with agents up here now is that they won't take you through an inspection outside of an open for inspection, because it's almost like the cattle call, right? They're driving everybody to an open for inspection on a Saturday at a different point in time. I'm now up here in Brisbane starting to see situations where we're queuing to get into the opens. They're creating this demand.
Yes, it's their job to do that. So
absolutely.
I think as buyers, though, it's our job too to try and find those off-market deals, like to meet your real estate agents and have a different level of conversation so that you're not playing that game with everybody else. And when people say, are there off-market deals available still? Yes, they are, because in amongst those real estate agents who are quite happy, I think they're doing the right thing by their vendors by getting that fever pitch feeling at the opens. There are also real estate agents who will sell a property straight from somebody who they know is about to list it because they don't have to apply any energy, they don't have to do the marketing. And to be honest, some people who are selling, they don't want people like that trudging through their house, particularly older people. They just want it nice and quiet. Or somebody who's had financial difficulties and they don't want the neighbourhood to know. They love a nice, quiet sale. So there are still properties off market, and you can kind of understand what the real estate agents are doing and try not to be involved in that kind of stuff. Do you know, I've got some words written down here from our original phone call, and your words were, I'm tired of second guessing myself.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, how many people listening to this can relate to that? And yet you had done renovations. You're so on the ball with numbers. You're very articulate and capable, but you still found yourself second guessing yourself. And so working with someone like Kelly, it's made a difference in that.
Oh, absolutely. The thing I love about Kelly, actually, I had a laugh the other day because I said to her, I have my coaching session with Kelly fortnightly. And then, of course, under the Accelerator program, I've got the group coaching session, and we were chatting a bit about that before. And even that in itself is so valuable, because the thing that you learn from is that you've got other people that are on this same journey at different stages of the journey, but it's reassuring as well. So, you know, I know that there's a couple of people in my group that are in that same, they're at that same point as me. It's like, dang it, you know, like, I mean, in saying that, I've done 3 offers. I've been to an auction, which was awesome because I've had the confidence with working with Kelly to actually go and bid at my very first auction. So that was a new experience that I had, which was brilliant. But, you know, being able to share all of that with these people in the group and know that they're on the same journey, and it's okay that I haven't quite found the right property yet. And everybody, it's that reassurance as well, because we talk about it. We say, okay, yes, we haven't found the property, but we know the numbers are the numbers.
Right. Because in this particular market, and you guys are all playing the game in the same market, right? At the moment, there's an undersupply of property. So when something hits the market, there's a lot of competition. But as renovators, the exciting part about that is when we finished our renovation and we put our properties on the market, we're taking our own finished, beautifully done properties to an undersupplied market where there are very, very keen buyers. So that it's, you know, once you get one, you're on the journey, you're in it. Once you've actually got that property, you're in it, then you go do the renovation, and then you're taking your property out to a really good buyer's market.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing, because we're at different stages in that journey, the thing that I love about it as well, and particularly in some of the Facebook groups, like with the Accelerator and the Mastery one, is you get to see, I love the fact that your members love filming and sharing what they're doing, so you can see the progress. And it's kind of like, you know, if I could watch that as a weekly update, that's all I'd be worried about doing. If you've got time to watch anything, it's you dial into those and have a look at
everyone's videos, everyone's 3-minute videos. Yeah, I agree, because in the end, it's watching other people who are just like us doing really good work, and the ups and the downs and the mess and the tradies and days on site and days where no one turns up, all of those things. It's just sharing that makes it very doable for everybody else that's watching. And I think for me too, you know, I found that timing is everything. So, you know, in part of the de-escalating of the fear factor and trying to reduce the risk, I had an investment property, which was a townhouse at Woodridge, and I'd had the same tenant since I'd bought it, lovely old fellow, and he it was a bit too much for him then, and he'd sort of progressed and moved into a nursing home. And so I kind of went, you know what, if I'm going to start this journey, this is a perfect opportunity for me to see whether I can do this on my own and try and remove some of that fear factor. So it was a cosmetic reno, and it was in a state.
I mean, I had that property since 2007, and I was a really good landlord in terms of never went near the place, but if something needed to be fixed, I got it fixed straight away. He was a great tenant, but oh my goodness, you know, eyesight failed, and you know, he was one of these gentlemen that loved cooking fat in frying pans and it was just sort of spoil everywhere. It was like, oh my God.
Hadn't cleaned in the corners in years.
Oh yeah. And look, he was not supposed to be smoking inside the townhouse. And you know, I think as he got older and it got colder, he kind of came inside a bit. And you know, when he moved out and they took the photos off the wall and everything, you could still see the outline because the nicotine had sort of given that extra coat on the wall. And it was shocking. And I mean, when we went to paint it, you know, the painters, which is Sarah's dad's, he's a painter and decorator. And so I got them in and he did a great job. And then he just said to me, he came to me and said, Trace, he said, look, I didn't think it was this bad, but we're actually going to have to put another coat of this primer down to stop the bleed because the nicotine just keeps
coming through. Yeah.
So, you know, that was a little bit of an unexpected cost. But, you know, the thing for me with that was it was more about proving that I could do it myself. And I did everything. So other than plumbing, electrical, and laying the carpet and the painting, I did everything else. And so it was ways of also working out how I could do it cost effectively, but still turn out a really good quality product. So I laid all the vinyl flooring and everything like that. And there was lots of lessons and I loved what I did. And it was great because I had a few tradies and one of the electrician that I actually used, he and his wife had joined one of the renovation groups and been on that journey and they've done a renovation of their own. Yes. And I was in the bathroom and looking up at the exhaust fan and it was the old plastic, you know, it had been there since the 80s. So it was all nice and yellow and everything else. And he sort of said to me, what are you going to do with the exhaust fan? He said, you're not going to replace it, are you? And I said, well, I can't leave it like that. And he said, I'll give you a tip. He said, go to Bunnings, buy a can of spray. Set yourself up a little spray booth. And he told me how to make one out of a cardboard box.
Said, spray it up.
Spray it up, pop it back on the ceiling. And he said, you won't know that it's not you. And I went, oh, I can do that. So it worked a treat, by the way. Worked a treat. So not only did I do that with the exhaust fan, but I also did it. So when you replace some of the old face plates on the electrical points, you still get the horrible orange part in the middle, that yellowing of the plastic with the electric points. I did it with that as well. Taped it up, sprayed it, flipped it over the rest of it. It was great. So he was good. So he came on that journey with me and he's still, like he said to me, when you do your next project, make sure you ring me. He said, you know, you're easy to work with and I'm up for this.
Well, I think if you can organise an air show, you can organise a cosmetic renovation.
You know, the funny thing about it was, and we can be terrible procrastinators about things, you know, when we find things challenging or we don't quite know what the solution is, we can procrastinate about it. And what I did with this particular thing was in the kitchen, I left all the original cabinetry because the carcasses were good down the bottom. The carcasses were great across the top. I replaced all the doors on the front because they were really worn and everything. And when I replaced them, I got the soft touch, which was good. And then I just painted the top. It was the first time I'd ever used the laminate paint. And oh my God, how good is that? It's brilliant. But the pantry, it was kind of like a pantry and that had to come out. So I took it out. And what I found was that they had put beside the pantry. So the pantry was at this end. And when you looked at the kitchen, you saw the side of the pantry. And they put like a facing board and it was wider than the pantry, but it blocked the view a little bit of the kitchen into the corner and those cabinets. So it kind of closed the kitchen down. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. So when I put the new kitchen in, what I did was when I put the new pantry in, I put the pantry in. I got the cabinet maker to do the side panel for me to match the new cupboard faces because I changed the color of those. But what it did leave me with was around the countertop, it was the old 80s one where it had the nice timber beading around
the bead.
Right?
I know exactly. My mother's house. Yeah,
exactly. So I had this space. So I did put the panel back on the side of the pantry, but to fit the pantry width. So I had this little space that really needed a timber trim. Do you think I could match? I could not find anything to match that timber trim. I went through trying to find solutions and I thought, okay, do I go and see if I can find an old kitchen cupboard that matches and demoed? And anyway, in the end, I watched heaps of YouTube videos and everything. And in the end, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to buy something that's as close as I can to it. And then I'm going to mark it up, and then I'm going to get tiny little jigsaw, and I'm going to jigsaw it out and then sand it back a bit and all that sort of stuff, and just have a go, right? Have a crack. So I did that, and I was so excited because when I marked it all up and cut it and I put it in, it fitted perfectly. I took close-up photos, and you couldn't even tell after I'd sanded it that it wasn't the same profile.
Perfect.
And so I was doing this little jig in the kitchen, and then I kind of went, oh, shit, now I've got to actually match the colour. So then I went off to Bunnings, and I just used a cotton ball with it, and I just did it, little layer on layer, and I matched it perfectly, and you would never know. I procrastinated for 3 months. That was the last thing that I did on that project. It took me that long to actually have the courage to give it a crack because I didn't want to bugger it up.
And it was very, very satisfying when you finished it and it looked good.
Yes, and that was the thing.
I take that as a win. That's a small win.
Oh, look, it was a big win, Belinda, because you know what? At the end of that, and then that was the last thing, and then I staged it all. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I can do this.
Yeah, how does it feel when it's all staged? That is like...
Yeah. It is and the thing that I loved about that then, and the staging, the fear of, not so much a fear of, but it's kind of like, oh, do I actually have the skill to do this? And so, and then I had done a staging kind of workshop, which was great. And they taught you about, okay, think about the style and what the end product, and then do your mood boards. So that's where I started with it. I started with the mood boards, and I started that when I was doing the renovation to get to that outcome. And it was kind of cool because, and I ended up selling it. I got a record price for it. I got a price that was $50,000 over any other sales in the area for 2-bedroom townhouses. I sold it to my audience. I sold it to a first home buyer, which, that for me, they were so excited. And I had a couple of offers that were both first home buyers. One was a young lady who came through with a mum, and one was a young fellow who came through. But the thing that I loved was that they loved the staging so much. They kind of said, oh, could we buy these prints? Could we have these? Can we have that? And it's kind of like, you know what? You've paid like $50 over. I'm happy to leave it for you. It's not a problem. Yeah. So good. And that took away, that was that last thing. And then the timing of hearing Kelly's podcast was pretty much within, I think it was within a month of settlement, I think, was hearing Kelly's podcast.
So that's why my phone call was like you just saying, this is where I'm at. This is what I want. You've got what I want. Let's go.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
So good. Okay, so just to remind everybody who's listening, there are 3 layers to my program. One is Renovation Mastery, which is essentially all of the tools you need to learn to renovate. What Tracy's referring to is Renovation Accelerator, which is the opportunity to work side by side with one of our renovation coaches, where you feel like you pick up the phone and ring anytime. You've got someone leaning over your shoulder, checking in on everything you're doing, right from buying the property, right through the renovation, and right through the sales process. And the 3rd layer is, if you're someone like Tracy who's got some renovation experience and really wants to take it next level, I can brand you and package you up to go out to market to be very, very appealing to the joint venture public, people who want to go halves in profit share deals, or if you want to just do simple jobs for people, like help them redo their bathrooms and their kitchen. So you're virtually working with clients. So 3 layers: learn to renovate alongside one of our renovation coaches, or go all in, chuck your jobs in, let's go. This is it. All in, boots and all, with me on a very personal level to launch your renovation businesses. So Tracy, I just want to thank you so much. What are your goals for the next 12 months? Let's call it next 12 months. Let's call it between now and when you're determined to retire.
So the goals for me, I've got 3 years or sooner. So the goals for me, I really want to get to the stage where I'm able to turn out 3 projects a year.
Yep.
So the other thing in the time frame as well too is I've thought about the long-term goals. So I have set up my structure. I've got my company.
Yes.
Underneath that company, for me, once I retire from corporate and the streams, I still want to be able to do flips. I do actually want to be able to do some renos and holds, but particularly a couple of Airbnbs. So
love them.
that path.
Yeah.
And that's also for the benefit, to be able to offer that benefit to family. So if we want to go away on a holiday, you know, we can go and do that and not have to worry about it, but still be able to hold that property for long-term wealth.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to do as well too is I love the staging side of it. That just really brings out the creative in me. So I want to be able to do that as a part of the structure of my business, to have that as a service. And then, to be perfectly honest, you know, I have been listening to a lot of the podcasts and in the groups, and some of the members that are contributing that are taking that next step and doing those smaller projects, or providing that guidance for other people that are looking at doing small reno projects. And seeing one of Kelly's projects where she had clients and working with real estate. So she had clients who bought a property, it was going to be an investment, and they were looking at what do they need to do to uplift the rental value, and then engaging Kelly to do that. For me, I think that's something that I would like to do in future as well too. So you'll probably see me back for your next stage as well, I think. You know,
okay, I'll have you in a heartbeat, Tracy, a heartbeat. Our interview will be very short. We go, hi, Tracy, you're in. Let's go.
Because I feel like having each one of those bases covered is going to give me that joy and that personal satisfaction. So I'll be retired from corporate, but finally doing the things that I love to do. So to get there, I need to do 3 properties. That's my goal. 3 properties.
Well, I'm glad you've kind of done the math on it. And when you start to add some joint venture projects, which open you up to, or which opens everyone up to really bigger projects, bigger profits, then man, don't we see an acceleration in progress when we're talking.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I mean, I know for me in the area that I'm in, I know, like, for me to really gain that traction, I need to be at that next level. But for me, doing this like on my own at the moment, I am in a certain bracket, and I've just got to work the numbers. I've just got to take the steps. And you know, I've got a couple of little mantras that's sitting on my desk here, and I just want to share them with everyone, because this is really what's relevant, and it's what's kept me focused. In terms of thinking about that bigger picture, sometimes we can get a little bit overwhelmed, and you know, we can do one thing and just think, oh, that's it, I can't do it anymore. But you've still got that overarching goal. And I've got this little diagram, and it says, what is the next smallest action to get you to your goal? And then it comes around, and then it just says, do that thing. Just that thing. So just one step at a time. Just do that thing. And the other one that I've got there is action is the key to success. So it kind of ties in with the do that thing. And then when I made the decision, it was really interesting. When I made the decision and made the phone call with you, and I worked my brand and everything else out. So I've got my branding, or my corporate branding and everything. And I decided to go off to Vistaprint, and I went and made myself up a coffee cup that sits here on my desk with my logo and everything on it, and my overarching brand. But on the back of it is, actually, I'll just see if I can show you. On the back of it is a message to myself as well, to remind me. And it just says, believe, if you can dream it, you can do it. And it's a
love it.
So, and that's my little logo on the front. So, and that sits here. So they're the things that remind me to keep coming back to my why. So if I can give anyone out there advice, and I know you hear it all the time on these things, but absolutely just do it. Understand, if you're held back by a fear, you've just got to work that process through and solve that fear. Find a way to solve it. Find a way to de-risk it, to allow you to move forward. And, you know, in that thing, it's what's the next smallest action. If you've got a fear, find out how you can de-risk that fear and mitigate it, so that it can help you to take that step forward to do this. Because if you've had this as a passion and you don't take the time to fully explore it and allow yourself to feel the fulfillment of achieving that passion, you're doing yourself an injustice. You really are. And I just find this whole process such an empowering thing as a woman. Ability to share knowledge with other people, to do this for myself. And I'm like a lot of the other, I love getting on the renovation rambles, and I love getting on, you know, some of those lives and everything, because the thing I love, everybody says, you know, you get the comments in there, oh, does anybody know how to do this? And it's always the same thing. Oh, I found this great thing on YouTube. we become these YouTube gurus because there's so much information out there.
So much information. It's way, way easier than it used to be.
Yeah. So, I think that really formulates, that's a part of the support as well. And that's just really that, just do it. Make that first step. Take the phone call. Even if you're somebody like me who made that phone call to you, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, maybe now, 5 or 6 years ago.
Probably was. Yeah.
Way back then. Just make the call and see how you can work through that process to get to where you want to go.
Awesome. So nice to have you, Tracy. If anybody wants to find Tracy, that was really easy for me because you're just so easy to talk to and just such a doer and a goer. So I totally love that. If anybody wants to reach out to Tracy, they can find her at Midfield Enterprises, Midfield, MIDFIELD, enterprises.com.au. You can also reach Tracy via me. I'm always happy to put you guys in touch. If you wanted to do like a joint venture project with Tracy or just talk to her about her experiences and renovating in and around the Brisbane area.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Tracy. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you, Belinda.